Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, over the coming weeks, the United States is set to experience an exceptionally active period of winter weather with multiple storms bringing heavy snowfall, ice, and dangerously cold temperatures. Millions of Americans will be affected as a series of strong systems move across the country, making travel hazardous and creating the potential for power outages, disruptions to daily life, and even severe weather in some regions. The combination of powerful storm systems and an Arctic blast that is expected to plunge deep into the country next week means that conditions will be far from typical for early February. While winter storms are common this time of year, the frequency and intensity of these upcoming events will make this period stand out as one of the most impactful stretches of winter weather so far this season. To begin with, the first of these winter storms is already making its presence felt today as freezing rain, sleet, and snow move into parts of the Northeast. This system has been developing over the past 24 to 48 hours and has already created significant impacts across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley in places like Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio's snowfall totals have ranged from 3 to 6 inches, with some areas seeing locally higher amounts. As the system moves further east, it is bringing a mix of wintry precipitation to Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. The impact of the storm will be most pronounced in the interior Northeast, where heavy snow is expected to accumulate through the evening and into early Friday. Areas closer to the coast, including New York City and Boston, are seeing a mix of rain and snow, with some potential for icy conditions overnight. The storm will gradually exit the region by Friday afternoon, but not before leaving behind a coating of ice in some locations and up to a foot of snow in the hardest hit areas. But before we get into the details, hit the subscribe button, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for your support. While this first storm is already causing disruptions, it is only the beginning of what is shaping up to be a particularly turbulent weather pattern. Looking ahead to the weekend, another storm system is expected to develop and track across the central U.S. before intensifying as it reaches the Northeast. This next storm will be significantly stronger than the current one, with the potential to drop even heavier snowfall amounts over a wider area. As the system moves into the Great Lakes region on Saturday, moderate to heavy snow will begin falling in states such as Wisconsin, Michigan, northern Illinois, and Indiana. This snow will spread eastward throughout the day, reaching parts of Pennsylvania and New York by Saturday night. By Sunday morning, much of New England will be under heavy snowfall, with snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches per hour possible in some locations. This storm will likely bring widespread travel disruptions, particularly in areas where snowfall is accompanied by strong winds, leading to blowing and drifting snow. In addition to snow, this system will bring a mix of sleet and freezing rain to portions of the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, where temperatures will be hovering right around the freezing mark. This means that areas from West Virginia to Maryland and even as far south as Virginia could see ice accumulation significant enough to cause dangerous road conditions and potential power outages. This will be a particularly tricky system for forecasters to track, as the exact placement of the heaviest snow in the icy mix will depend on small fluctuations in temperature. Even a shift of just a few degrees could mean the difference between a foot of snow and a dangerous layer of ice. As if this wasn't enough, yet another storm is expected to form early next week, bringing additional rounds of winter weather to many of the same areas. By Monday, yet another system will be developing across the central U.S., once again tapping into moisture from the Gulf of Mexico while being fueled by cold air from Canada. This setup will create a widespread precipitation event stretching from the southern plains through the Midwest and into the Northeast. While details are still coming together, current model guidance suggests that this storm will have a more southerly track, meaning that areas like Missouri, Kentucky, and even parts of northern Arkansas could see accumulating snowfall. Meanwhile, the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic will once again be in the zone for freezing rain and sleet, while the Northeast braces for yet another round of heavy snow. This storm will be notable not just for its wintry impacts, but also for the severe weather threat it could bring to the deep south. As warm, moist air surges northward ahead of the storm, there will be an increased risk of thunderstorms, some of which could be strong to severe. This could mean damaging winds, heavy rain, and even the potential for tornadoes in parts of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. The severe weather threat will be highest on Monday and Tuesday before the storm pushes eastward. While the active storm pattern alone would be enough to keep forecasters busy, the other major weather story next week will be the arrival of a powerful Arctic blast. This frigid air mass is expected to sweep down from Canada, bringing some of the coldest temperatures of the season to a vast portion of the country. By Tuesday and Wednesday, temperatures in the northern plains and Midwest will plummet well below zero, with wind chills making it feel even colder. Cities such as Minneapolis, Chicago, and Des Moines could see wind chills in the 20 to 230 def range, while even locations as far south as Texas and the Gulf Coast will experience a significant cool down. This Arctic outbreak could have widespread implications, particularly if it lingers longer than expected. The combination of extreme cold and multiple snowstorms will place a heavy burden on infrastructure, increasing the risk of power outages and travel disruptions. Those in areas prone to extreme cold will need to take precautions to protect themselves, their homes, and their vehicles. The bitter cold will also increase demand for heating, potentially leading to energy supply concerns in some regions. Long-range forecasts suggest that this active pattern is unlikely to change anytime soon. In fact, multiple computer models indicate that additional winter storms could continue well into the middle of February. Some models even hint at the possibility of a particularly strong system developing around February 15th, though details remain uncertain at this time. What is clear, however, is that the Northeast, Midwest, and parts of the plains will continue to see rounds of snowfall over the coming weeks, with cumulative totals that could be significant. And it's not just the ice storm we're talking about. Over on the Winter Storm Severity Index, we've got elevated concerns for the High Sierra in California. If you're in the higher elevations there, brace yourselves for tons of snow over the next 3 days. That's going to cause extreme travel disruptions, and this storm will stretch up into the Cascades as well. We're talking snow, ice, and a mess of conditions in the western U.S. But we've also got another storm on the way, storm number 2, and that's going to impact the eastern U.S., just like this one. Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's focus on the ice storm for now. So here's what Thursday, February 6th is going to look like around 2. We'll see heavy icing in the central Appalachian Mountains. Think Pennsylvania, Maryland, and parts of West Virginia and Virginia. There's going to be light icing further north in places like southern Michigan, northern Indiana, and northern Ohio. You might even hear a clap of thunder in places like Cleveland as freezing rain and sleet come down. Yes, you heard that right. Thunderstorms in the middle of a winter storm, which isn't something you see every day. Meanwhile, up in the upper peninsula of Michigan and portions of Ontario, it's all snow. But let's zoom in on the mid-Atlantic. This is where the icing will be heaviest around 4 to 6 a.m. Thursday morning, especially around Hagerstown and Cumberland. This is the period we need to worry about power outages and incredibly dangerous driving conditions. Even though it won't be a full-on ice storm the entire time in places like Scranton or Philadelphia, you'll still get a burst of heavy snow followed by sleet and freezing rain. This will make your Thursday morning commute a nightmare. By 6, we'll see heavy snow pushing into New York City, while areas like southern Pennsylvania are still dealing with ice. If you're in Baltimore or D.C., be ready for sleet. Again, it's going to be one of those situations where everything's a mess. Most people are going to get a glaze of ice, but we could see half an inch or more in spots like State College, Harrisburg, and Cumberland, which means the risk of power outages and dangerous roads increases significantly. If you're in those areas, get ready. This could be a prolonged event. By 10 a.m. Thursday, New York City will be seeing snow, while areas like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Boston will start seeing heavy snow around noon. This will be a quick storm, so by the late afternoon, around 3 or 4 p.m., most of it should be wrapping up. It's going to be an inch or two of snow for most areas, but the real concern is the ice further south. Now, we can't forget about the severe weather threat in the south. Right now, we've got a marginal risk of severe storms across Kentucky, Tennessee, and Ohio. This means there's a 2 chance of tornadoes in the mix, which is pretty rare for February, but it's something we can't ignore. Areas like Bowling Green, Nashville, Jackson, Tennessee, and even Louisville are all in this marginal risk zone, so keep an eye on the skies. It's unlikely we'll see any strong tornadoes, but brief spin-ups are definitely possible, especially as storms push northeast tonight. Speaking of tonight, check out what the radar is going to look like around 8 or 9 p.m. Central Time. Storms will be moving into areas like Lexington and Somerset, Kentucky, moving fast and potentially bringing hail. Back here in my area between Huntington and Pikeville, we're going to get heavy rain, lightning, and a ton of thunder. It's going to be a noisy night, but here's the kicker. Some of the strongest storms won't really hit until 6 a.m. Thursday morning. That's when we're going to see some serious action in southeastern Kentucky, and those storms won't let up until around noon. All right, once we wrap up storm number 1, I need you to start paying attention to storm number 2. This one's going to hit California hard. Thursday into Friday, the High Sierra is going to see a ton of snow. So if you live in or near those higher elevations, you're going to be looking at some very serious snow accumulations. The Pacific is going to bring moisture, which could also lead to some flooding in California's Central Valley. We'll also see snow moving into the Great Basin and Rockies, and that'll likely extend into Wyoming and the Dakotas. By 1 p.m. on February 7th, storm number 2 will be bringing heavy snow across the region. And guess what? Once storm 2 wraps up, storm number 3 will be right behind it. By Saturday, February 8th, we could see another ice storm hitting places like south central Pennsylvania and Virginia, along with heavy snow in southern Ontario and Michigan. While it's still too early to get into snow totals, this storm looks to be more potent than the current one. The really interesting part comes later in the forecast. By next week, February 11th and 12th, we've got storm number 3 potentially becoming a huge deal. It's looking like we could have a major winter storm along the East Coast. This would likely be a classic nor'easter, meaning heavy snow from DC to New York City. And the models are showing that New England could get a pretty big hit. It's still a bit early to say exactly how things will play out, but if this storm does materialize, we're talking about one of the biggest storms of the year. Finally, don't forget about the ongoing risk for flooding and more severe weather in the Southeast. From February 10th through 14th, we're looking at above average precipitation, which could lead to flooding, especially in places like the Tennessee Valley and Dixie Alley. As the storm pushes north, we'll see a mix of ice and snow heading into the northern U.S., so it's going to be a real mess down south and up north, too. All right, that's all the weather news I have for today. I know it's a lot to take in, but keep checking back because I'll be posting daily updates over the next week as these storms develop. Stay safe out there and make sure you're prepared. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and leave me a comment with any questions or thoughts you have on these storms. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.